Hello, welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And this is This Week in History. What we do is we pick an event from This Week in History. Will researches it and then tells me about it. And he's got 1 hour to do that.
And I accidentally did product placement. Almost.
look at
It's
that.
slightly obscured, so you can't tell.
Yes. If you want to become a Patreon and buy us some coffee, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah, we love coffee. Coffee makes the history come forward. It makes the history easier to digest. Sometimes.
Let's see. We'll see how...
Today's has no genocide,
Yay!
but it does have slavery.
Well, can't beat them all.
Can't have everything.
All right. So he has 1 hour to do this. What are we discussing today?
Today we are discussing the Great Siege of Malta.
The Great Siege of Malta.
The Great Siege of Malta, because there were many, so this is the great one.
We'll find out, including where Malta is.
Yes.
But Will has 1 hour starting...
All right. So, Malta, you wanted to know where it is. It's in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea near the island of Sicily.
I knew it was an island.
It is an island. And yes, before you ask, we will be discussing the Maltese Falcon and where that comes from, because it's part of the history of Malta. So the history around this right now, so this takes place, our specific event starts in 18 May 1565, and it ends on the not so great date for Americans, September 11th,
Oh.
but 1585, so, 400 some odd years before the date.
Okay.
But
So it really didn't mean
that
anything to
date
him. It's
is
just
not a
another date.
great one for most people.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, so it's a good date for the siege purposes because that's when it's done. I'm not going to tell you which side wins. It's not.
I don't even know whose side to root
Exactly.
for. Uh-oh.
We're getting
it's
interrupted
my phone.
by a phone, Mike.
I know. I don't even know where it is. That's a telemarketer, too.
And that's why we hate telemarketers.
That's why we also put our phone on vibrate. Sorry about that. And why do we hate telemarketers? Why do
We
hate
don't like telemarketers. They interrupt history.
them? Oh. Okay, I'll buy you the 30
I
seconds.
don't need it back. That's fine.
Okay.
I'll talk faster for right now. We're going to go really, really fast. Anyway, what this is this is a battle between the Ottoman Empire, who we've kind of talked about a little bit. We talked about one of their great sultans, Mehmed II.
Yeah. Is it modern day Turkey?
Yes, that's modern day Turkey. It's also several other nations at this point
Well, it was an
because
empire.
this is the height of the empire. This is when it is at its absolute strongest.
Ooh. And of course, classic and known for their footstools.
Yes, they had the best footstools. Nobody makes them better than the Ottomans.
Yeah. I actually don't know if that's true.
You're never gonna not make that joke, and I probably should research if that's where Ottomans actually come from. I would hope.
Yeah, why wouldn't it
I
be?
think it's spelt the same.
They didn't just make up another name.
Yeah, but it's funny. I think it's lowercase, so like the foot thing. So it's not like you're putting your feet on the Ottomans.
Well, yeah.
But
sure.
maybe that's where I feel like some nation that had a problem with the Ottoman Empire named their footstool. It's like, oh, this is what I think of you guys. Take that, Sultan.
See, I'm far more optimistic. I think that they designed it.
That's
in the
fine.
Ottoman Empire.
But I just like to think of it's some cheeky insult
Sure, that
from
could be.
somebody who's like, conquer my country.
Well, tune in next week and we'll find out if we researched that and
Yep.
looked it up.
Yeah, we might have to talk about that. I feel like I have to. So what this is, though, is this is the Ottoman Empire, which lasted from 1299 until 1922.
Oh.
So it's actually one of, if not the longest running empires in the history of the world. I have to look it up. But as far as continuous empires, that's
Sure.
longer than Rome was an empire. There was no European empire that lasted that long. Alexander the Great's didn't last that long.
Oh.
I don't think any of the major Chinese dynasties lasted that long. So that's
Good job, Ottomans.
600 and almost 30 years.
I wonder what they did wrong in 1922.
Well, they lost World War One. Whoops. And that was the downfall.
Took the whole world to take them down.
Yes, but
All right.
it's interesting. So we'll talk about this. Like I said, right now, though, this is the height of the Ottoman Empire, so we can only go downwards after the height, right?
Right,
So
well.
if your height is 1565, how far down do you go? How much do you decline? Or is it kind of just a gradual, like, or did it plateau for 400 years and then go, we're out?
We'll find out.
We'll talk more about the Ottomans over time because they take place in Asia, in Africa, in Europe. They're all over the place, and it's centrally located, so they're involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Trade routes and such.
Yeah, trade routes, conquests. They owned part of huge swaths of like northern Africa, the whole thing is basically Ottoman territory at this point. So what the Ottomans are actually trying to do is something that the Romans did. They're trying to turn the Mediterranean Sea into a lake. Like, that's what they used to refer to the Mediterranean Sea, was a Roman lake, because they owned every piece of land around it. For a
is
while.
that what it means to be a lake?
To be a lake.
That
It
you
has to
own?
be completely surrounded by land.
Oh, are they trying to turn it into
And they're
one?
trying to turn it into the Mediterranean Sea into an Ottoman lake. They want to control everything
so
in there.
they don't want to, like, shut it off.
Yeah, they don't want to shut it off or anything, but they want to control...
More metaphorically a lake.
Metaphorical.
Then, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
I thought they were doing, like, a big project.
It's a fill-in. We'll fill in the Strait of Gibraltar, and we'll
seems
fill
like
in the
a
Bosporus, and we'll be fine.
It's a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea. Yeah. Then you just have kind of
big...
the Mediterranean mudflats eventually, because they're not fed by the oceans or rivers. It's just kind of it's downhill from there. But their biggest opponents for all of this was originally the Byzantine Empire, which has fallen by now. Were the Crusader states, which have also fallen. And they have a huge problem pushing into Eastern Europe, because Eastern Europe is not favorable territory for Ottoman warfare. Ottomans, typically, they started out as Turkish warriors, so it's all mounted archers, right? That's how they fought. That was a huge part of it. Light infantry, moving through very warm temperature usually, except at night, because the desert gets really cold at night. And when you're 80 degrees and then it's 30, it might not snow, but it's really that temperature difference is harsh.
Okay.
So they're used to like kind of wide open spaces and then some rockier terrain too, but not big dense forests.
But they're still able to get a lot of... So they were stuck going that way. But they could... They conquered a lot.
They've conquered a huge amount of territory. They've conquered really far to the east. They've conquered up into the north, but again, Russia gets really cold, so they don't like that. They hold like what's modern day Armenia, and that comes into Ottoman history later with the Armenian genocide. The term genocide was actually coined specifically because of what the Ottomans did there.
Oh boy, you know your empire is doing great when they coin
a phrase specifically, because no crime has been committed that they have a word for it yet.
Yeah, it was
at least with like Genghis Khan, that was warfare.
Sure.
That wasn't a systemic removal of a people and just killing them. This was, and it's still disputed today. So we just got this video banned in Turkey. Oops. And that's okay. But anyway,
sorry to all our Turkish fans.
Sorry to our Turkish fans. But the Armenian genocide was a thing. That's what we call it, and everybody else in the international community calls it, except Turkey. They're like the Armenian inconvenience. They probably refer to it as the Armenian problem. But
maybe. Well, I can't speak for all Turkish people.
Can't speak for all Turkish people. Most Turkish people, super nice. I've met a couple Turkish people, fantastic. It's just when governments start to say, we need to do this bad thing, that's when you got to be questioning it.
Turkey.
So, anyway, the Ottoman Empire, though, is ludicrously powerful right now. And they are headed by one of the most famous leaders in all of history. And his picture is going to go right here because he has the best hats.
Ooh.
Suleiman the Magnificent.
Suleiman.
That's how amazing he was, is he is referred to by everybody as the Magnificent. Even Europeans who hated the Turks are like, yeah, he's pretty magnificent. Like, because the things he did are incredible. Now, at this time, Suleiman was alive from 1494 till 1566, so he lives past this event.
Oh,
barely.
Spoilers.
Barely. He's not at this event. But normally, it is expected for the Sultan to rule from the front.
Oh.
He has led conquest after conquest. He is much like his ancestor, Mehmed, who is the guy we talked about a few episodes ago, Mehmed's conquests.
Isn't he quite a target?
Yeah.
Especially as magnificent as he is?
Yeah. And and his hat is like that.
Well, I can see in the picture.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And he apparently wore hats like that throughout his reign, because there's a picture of him when he's young and a picture of him when he's old.
Oh, boy.
I have two pictures. I have a lot of pictures of Suleiman. He's
great.
A lot of people made portraits of him while he was alive. That was considered. This is like a cool time in history, because this is when people really start to take very detailed notes.
Oh.
They do portraits of important leaders, because they're all realizing we don't know what some of our ancestors look like. And with how great you are and these achievements you've made, maybe we should have pictures for posterity.
Huh.
And also, if you're the opponent, you're like, we need to know which guy to shoot.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, we know to look for a guy with a big hat, but that's a very popular look in Turkey at this time.
This is way off topic, but wasn't there some Scottish or Irish person who was going to get married to somebody, and the way they decided was they sent them a portrait of them?
That's a very common thing that happened at this time.
Well, it's something we had talked about.
But I believe so, yeah. We talked about somebody who they were like, oh, he's quite the looker. And then they're like,
I figured hold it a bigger.
Yeah, it's a big picture.
portrait.
Yep. Yeah. Not a little curio. They're like,
yeah, hang that on the wall. I want to see what it looks like
to...
over there.
Yes. I like what I see here, especially the bustle. That's good.
Sure,
yes.
sure.
Shows she's a woman of propriety.
Oh, see, I was looking at a man the whole
Or
time.
a man. Yeah, if it's a man. I appreciate the codpiece because he's protecting himself, and we want to have children.
Ah, the bustle and the codpiece.
The bustles and the codpieces to protect for no reason sometimes. I don't know. But anyway, so Suleiman the Magnificent is very famous at this time. He's infamous in Europe because he has conquered so much territory. He's carving his way into modern-day Hungary.
Oh, boy.
With one exception, one particular headache has been frustrating him and his family line, Vlad Dracula. Oh. So that is a part of like Suleiman's background, is having to deal with that guy. There's a lot. It's a very interesting thing, like, because that guy inspired a lot of people to do the same thing: guerrilla warfare, and then sometimes working for the Ottomans, sometimes not working for the Ottomans. Vlad Dracula,
the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Tepish called Dracula.
Okay.
Yep. Or he was called that because he was part of the Order of the Dragon. Like, that's how scary these guys are. So he's very impressive. But he has created kind of a concept of fighting using hit-and-run tactics, light cavalry, like what the Turks use, but they're good in the woods, which is wild. So they come riding out of the woods, hit the enemy, run away, fade into like mountain strongholds, and then the Turks can't really get them. So the Turks are kind of stymied in the Eastern Europe chunk.
Okay.
And they've been dealing with this extremely powerful family, the Habsburgs, who we've talked about a bunch of times. Currently, they are led by Charles V, who's basically the European equivalent of Suleiman. He is incredibly powerful, incredibly charismatic. He's rich. He basically owns the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, and then all of their possessions. And this is when Spain is colonizing like crazy and just plundering North and South America of every scrap of gold and silver they can
This
get.
is the Armada time?
This is the Armada times.
Armada?
Yes,
Right.
These guys are loaded. So it's basically two world superpowers at loggerheads. They just are not getting on well.
So basically a world war before we started keeping track.
Yes,
of world
yeah.
wars.
This is a world war before we really got to World War, because it's kind of an East versus West. It is Islamic tendencies versus Christian tendencies versus, and you've got so much history of just bad blood. This goes back to basically when Islam first showed up. Christians started having a problem with it, but like the Crusades started in the 11th century, and it's been nonstop fighting basically ever since. So these people like have a generational hate.
Really bodes well for your crusade. We're really convincing them that our religion is the religion of peace.
Yep. Stab.
It's only taken us, a couple hundred years? We'll get them soon.
We'll get them. Because, yeah, the First Crusade's the only one
We want to save them for God.
It's funny because the First Crusade was the only one that was successful. They took Jerusalem. And then every subsequent crusade was to either retake Jerusalem or to hold on to it. But they never, once they lost it, they never got it back.
It's like movie sequels, man. Sometimes the first one's the best, and that's it.
Just don't even try. You know, there's some where the second one's better.
Sure.
This is not the case.
Right.
So, Suleiman, though, he is convinced, not like irrationally convinced, but he is convinced that the Christian former Crusader states are a threat to his power. And so he begins this war, and he really focuses on the Mediterranean. It's the center of trade, and you have access to everything.
Yeah.
You know, you have access to France, to Italy, to Spain. You can sail
Plus
around to England.
the access to the Mediterranean, which is nice.
Which is nice. Yeah. This is where most trade occurs in Europe, especially from places like Venice, who's a superpower regarding trade.
Sure.
He owns Constantinople now. So that's a huge center of trade. And from there, he can go up into like the Black Sea area and travel through wherever he wants to go.
What a life.
controlling the Mediterranean is huge. He realizes early on he's going to have a problem with one particular group of very stubborn Christian knights. So back in the day of the Crusades, we had these major orders of knighthood, right?
Knights Templar.
We had the Templar. Well, they're gone, right? We got
Yeah.
rid of them.
yeah.
We talked about that.
Phew.
But we had another order that's really important. This is not the Teutonic Knights, who were the ones up in Germany.
Okay.
This is the Knights Hospitaller. They're the ones who wore black, and they had a white cross. It's called a Maltese cross now.
Oh.
It's very, like, sharp, points inwards kind of a thing.
Yeah.
A lot of militaries use them for insignia. In the United States military, we use them for, like, our marksmanship badges. It's a very common symbol. It looks like kind of 4 triangles put together, almost like a square, but not quite touching.
Do you mean like this?
This, I gotta stop pointing at my face
you
when
go.
I do this. Yep, that's a Maltese cross.
Okay.
Well, so these Knights Hospitaller, they lose their home when Jerusalem falls, and then they start losing all of their land in the Middle East, which the Europeans called Outremer, or the Levant, or the Holy Land, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Their final stronghold in that area is the island of Rhodes. Rhodes is off the coast of Greece. It's historically has had impregnable fortress after impregnable fortress. Every time you want to like show that you're the best at sieges, you go after Rhodes. Like it's just very tough. It's always a tough nut to crack. It's hard to land on.
But not uncrackable, apparently.
It's not uncrackable. It's been cracked several times.
So much for impregnable.
But that's right. It's impregnable until it's not.
Right.
It's invincible until it isn't. Rhodes was considered just a really secure, difficult thing. So unless you were willing to lose a lot of guys or a lot of resources in general, spend a lot of time besieging something, you weren't going to get it. And it always involved like crazy things. Like when Alexander attacked it, he built a giant bridge to get to the citadel to attack it directly. Other guys used like giant mega catapults and all kinds of stuff, and it was defended once by Archimedes, who's the great inventor, and it just it's kind of a legendary place.
Is Rhodes where the Colossus statue
Yes,
is?
that's where it was. They built the Colossus of Rhodes out of the metal that they took from defeated enemies. So
That's a flex.
yeah, right? We crushed all of you so badly. We built this, and it's big enough
It's
to basically
giant.
straddle our harbor. Take it.
I like that statue, but I always thought would be weird, like sailing under it. Just hello.
Hello.
Every detail.
You guys spared no expense.
Well.
Are those brass, do you think?
Oh, I'd make them big bells.
Big bells that gong. Yep. Ship coming in. Gong. Welcome to Rhodes. That's amazing. I love that.
Because it's gone now, right? Completely gone?
It's gone. Yep.
Not even like
Yep.
Lafitte?
There's nothing left. I think they found like where it stood.
Yeah.
But that's like collapsed into the sea too.
But there's like no documentation. They had like I've seen, or there's like illustrations must be of the feet part.
Yes.
Anyway.
I'd have to look into more of it because
So we
it was
don't know
supposed
that there weren't bells right up there.
There
in the
could have been
crotch.
bells. We don't know.
That's where I would put them.
Big jingle bells. That
Just
not
bells.
classical hanging with the knocker thing. Jingle bells.
It's one guy's job to pull the lever and make them ring.
That's horrible. If we weren't banned in Turkey before, now we're going to be banned for indecency.
Sure.
Thanks, Turkey.
All right. Thank you for the balls.
Yes, thank you. So the Knights Hospitaller, or also called like the Knights of St. John and a few other phrases, they have gone here. They still have chapter houses elsewhere.
Okay.
So they are extremely well respected because they're like one of the knightly orders that didn't commit atrocities. Their job was to protect pilgrims.
I like how the bar is really low.
The bar is
They're
really
great.
low.
What did they do? Well, they didn't do atrocities.
They didn't butcher a bunch of innocent
Great.
people. Like anytime you look through stuff, like the Knights Templar are in there just killing everybody, and the Knights Hospitaller are like, hospital. That's in our name. Can we not?
Is that where the name came from? The hospital, or
I think that's where they
both,
got.
They
there
both
from.
derived
It's
from similar
set.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have this sacred duty to protect the Holy Land. Well, this starts to shift a little bit when they don't own anything in the Holy Land anymore, right? So they create this naval bastion in Rhodes.
Oh, yeah.
That's water.
Sorry. I was trying to fix the lighting a little bit. We got... Oh, God.
We have weird weather going on outside.
Yeah,
so it's,
something got real dark. All right.
it's shifting things
I
around.
feel better.
I feel better.
You look better.
Well, thank you.
I look darker.
Thank you. You just keep adjusting it. Don't
It's an
spill any
imperfect
more
system.
water.
All right.
Yep. But we're figuring it out. So this is all because we're still going to have our new studio space
Soon.
after the walls are put back.
Soon.
We're going to build the wall. It's going to be the best wall.
All right. Let's move on.
Okay. Okay.
Knights Hospitaller.
The Knights Hospitaller. They have turned Rhodes into their fortress. Suleiman knows that he cannot expand westward so long as he has this den of vipers, as he refers to it, and other things. He does not like these guys at all.
Doesn't sound like it.
Because they are pirates now.
Oh.
They're privateers. Like they're pirates for Christianity. Like that's
Okay,
how they
sure.
see it. They constantly attack his shipping. If it's not a Christian ship, they attack it.
Oh, man.
That's their setting. That's their plan.
Okay.
And they're going to use it as a naval base for future operations that other Christian countries can send troops to, ships to, and operate out of. So
Rhodes,
This
we're
is
talking about.
yes.
Okay.
So this has got to go away.
Yeah, this is a problem.
So back in 1522, he commits a second siege of the place because he tries once, it doesn't work for him.
Siege me once.
Yep.
Shame on me.
So he goes and he does some more things. He gets better as a general. He gathers more resources. And then eventually he's like, you know what? I thought I could just ignore you guys. You're too much of a problem.
Ooh.
He comes back. He besieges Rhodes. There's this great battle that takes place. It's its own event, so we're not going to go too much into it.
Sure.
And eventually the Hospitallers lose and are forced to flee.
Oh.
Now, they have incredible ship captains at this time, so they're able to get a lot of them, their order away.
Okay.
But now they don't have a home.
No,
So
no.
they're warrior knights without a home.
Oh.
They start talking to different people, trying to find new land, and eventually Charles V says, I will give you Malta.
I have... Why does he have Malta?
He owns it. He owns all the things. His wife is the Queen of Sicily.
Oh, okay.
So she literally... that Malta is owned by Sicily at the
Sure.
time. So they're like, well, nobody technically runs it. And you know what's awesome? We'll put an order of knights on that island, and that will secure it, and we don't have to do anything.
Nice.
Because then we don't have to pay for it from our coffers.
Is
They
Malta
pay.
nice? It sounds nice.
Malta is gorgeous.
Yeah, it sounds like a gorgeous place.
Nowadays, the whole city is basically just like if you had a castle
Yeah.
spread out over
Oh.
an island. Like, because it's been fortified so many times that it's just all this really lovely brickwork and stonework, and it's gorgeous, and it's the middle of the Mediterranean,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah, it
great,
sounds great.
nice, beautiful, calm winters, but it's the Mediterranean too, so the weather can shift fast.
Oh,
The Mediterranean is kind of a tricky sea to deal with. Now, an important thing to talk about too is because of how the Mediterranean functions is how naval combat works at this time.
Oh.
In a lot of our visions of Navy, we think of either like the way the Greeks did it, which is actually very similar to what we're going to be dealing with, or the big ships with the tall sails shooting at each other with these big cannonades and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Well, we're not quite to that age of sail where it's these big ships with
Right.
just banks and banks of guns.
They don't really... Do they have cannons yet?
Oh, they do. Oh, they do.
On the
And
boats?
how? Yes. So, like I said, this is the start of the Spanish Armada.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So they have created a ship called a galleon. These things could hold like 80 guns, and by guns we mean cannons. So these are massive, like 4-story highs above the water ships.
Wow.
They're like a floating fortress, but they're not good in the Mediterranean because the winds can just go away. Completely.
And then you're just got a big
And
four-story
then you
tall
just-
target.
Just kind of floating there, hoping nobody kills you.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot of really shallow water. There's a lot of really tricky things to navigate. And just getting through, like, the Strait of Gibraltar with a big ship is stupidly hard.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's crosswinds blowing all over it. And also, you got to think, like, you've got the north coast of Africa is basically a flat desert for a large chunk of it.
Yeah.
So you have whatever's wind is coming from there blowing that way. And then you
that's
have
a
whatever
dry
wind
wind.
comes across from Europe, which is much wetter, colliding in
Oh,
the Mediterranean. So it gets kind of wild there. They don't have like hurricanes like what we have in the States or in the Atlantic Ocean, but they have rough weather sometimes.
Okay.
And it can come out of nowhere. But it also can just go totally still. And that's the worst thing that you can run into on a sailing vessel is
Yeah.
becalmed waters.
Now,
But-
these large boats probably don't...
They don't use
can't
them
row.
much. They
can't row.
can't row them. No, because they're too big. There's no way to generate enough oar power.
One poor guy.
We had the one from the rowboat. It's not working. And we're talking like, several hundred tons of displaced weight from these massive ships. So what they've gone with is called a galleon. Or not a galleon, a galleass. Which is, so there's a galleon and a galleass. A galleass is basically, it's a rowing vessel with some cannons on it. Now, because you have oars, you can't have nearly as many guns.
Right.
So typically what they had is a big gun on the front or a couple of guns pointing forward and a ram.
Oh.
And you rammed into other ships.
Row fast,
yes,
row fast.
You row as fast. So, yeah, that was the Greek and Roman way of dealing with warfare was you row as fast as you can into the side of the other ship. And you'd have these crazy maneuvers where, you're sailing this way, and then you cut really sharp so you can just nail them in the side.
Yeah,
that was the thing.
I've done bumper cars.
Yeah, exactly. It is very similar to bumper cars. But if you had the cannon on the front, like a little water cannon.
Sure.
That's how you could have a better.
But at the same time, you're going to hit them sideways. They're going, nah.
They're trying to do the exact same thing to you. And then you also have a huge group of Marines. So this is the concept of the Marine is a soldier trained to fight on the water.
Yeah.
Marine warfare. It is not solely like United States created.
Yeah.
They call them Marines.
I was found the Marines in the United States don't really... They just kind of do everything.
They can do
They're
everything.
not focused on water.
No,
I thought
typically...
they should be a water-based.
So in the United States Army, the Marines are based... they're part of the Navy.
Yeah.
So they follow all the ranks of the Navy, typically, except for their... It's interesting. Like, their enlisted guys have their own thing. They got lance corporals and all this other stuff. And then they start getting into the petty officer ranks. It gets weird. It's not super important, but they are transported almost exclusively by the Navy. And every Navy vessel has a complement of Marines on board to protect it. So they work in tandem. And then Marines are usually trained in amphibious warfare. So like coming off of a ship, taking a boat, getting off the boat, running in and shooting people. They are not as well equipped typically for prolonged land combat. But nowadays we've got planes, so everybody can be. It's just a difference in training anymore.
Okay.
And there are not as many of them. There's a lot less, the whole few of the proud, the Marines.
Yeah.
The Army's just much
Yeah, they're a specialized group.
Yeah, they're much more specialized, correct. So these guys are trained in how to fight on a ship. You're not having as much heavy armor.
Right.
Because armor's definitely a thing still.
They got little floaties.
They do not have floaties.
Oh, you gotta get some little floaties.
You either learn how to swim or you learn how to die.
Swimming in armor sounds tricky.
Exactly, so that's why you're not really as heavily armored.
Sure.
Unless you're the Hospitaller Knights. Now, these guys have evolved from...
Frogs.
Yes, and they don't care. There's frogs. Actually, a lot of them are French. Well, actually, I'll get into the whole equipment thing specifically later, but the equipment has significantly changed since the Knights Hospitaller wore their black, like they called it a hauberk, which was chainmail from like knee to crown.
Oh, okay.
And it was, just heavy and hung on the shoulders. Now we're talking plate armor and guns.
Wow.
So these guys have evolved their fighting methods, but in the
still not good for a boat.
Not great for a boat. A lot of guys did wear like a breastplate.
Well,
because you can throw that off pretty fast. Sure. You got some straps here, and you can cut them and throw it off, and then you're just in your clothes, which can still be heavy. But that was pretty common because they made breastplates to withstand a bullet.
Oh, okay.
That was a very common thing.
That was
take a bullet.
A weird chunk of time where we had guns and armor for swords and stuff, and we better make this armor a little thicker.
And they had to make it a little thicker, correct. And that's why plate armor became super popular because it could stop a sword, a mace, an axe, a dagger, a spear, and a gun.
Huh.
It was very hard to crack a guy's armor when he was wearing that. So knock him in the water, trip him up, and get him on the ground, and then stab him in the weak spots. Like a very big steel turtle.
Perfect.
Go for the weak spots. But then we start to get into this concept of what parts of the armor do I actually need for what I'm doing? So like if you're defending the battlements of a castle, you don't need as much leg armor. If you're not riding on horseback, you don't need as much leg armor. You can get by with shoulders, chest, head, that kind of thing.
You can get by without your legs.
You can get by without the legs being as protected because typically people aren't going, I'm going to stab him in the shin.
Sure.
Just wear thick boots.
Okay.
So both armies, or I should say navies at this time, have kind of developed the similar concept of this galleass. It's a long ship. A lot of them are 100 feet long. Some of them carry as many as 300 men on board for boarding actions and fighting. And a huge part of both naval functions, I guess, revolves around slavery.
Oh,
You don't want your sailors to be rowing,
no.
but you need somebody to row.
To get some human motors in there.
So the Muslims would take Christian slaves as their galley slaves, and the Christians did the exact same thing
We'll
back
show
to the
you.
Muslims.
Okay.
Although they also took Jews as galley slaves.
Yeah.
That's important to note because once again,
Lest we forget.
whenever anybody is allowed to mess with the Jews, they do it.
Yes.
Although the Muslims,
To be clear, we're not pro
we're not
that.
okay. That's
The way you
not
said
okay.
That, the way you said that did sound a little bit like you were okay with
No,
that idea.
yes, I'm not remotely okay with that idea. Although the Ottomans do it less.
Oh.
I don't actually know that it is not recorded that I could see. Now, they probably did have some
Sure.
Jewish galley slaves,
Well, once
but that
again,
wasn't a target.
When the bar is set so low.
Well, even in like when they took Constantinople, they set up like a Jewish quarter for the Jews to live in. Not like a ghetto where it sucked. It was like, oh, well, we want you guys to live here because you bring trade and stuff and you know how business works.
Okay.
Move on in. That was a thing for them. They had no real problem with the Jews. They thought they were like kind of infidel unbelievers, but also Islam believes that they are just the evolution of Judaism turns into Christianity, turns into Islam.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So the true scholars...
not their fault.
Yeah, exactly. The true scholars are like, well, you guys just haven't gotten far enough along
Yeah.
the path. It's fine.
Okay.
And the Jews typically weren't trying to undermine what they were doing. They
just
were
trying to live.
They're just trying to survive. They're so used to, like, they're just... Everybody keeps trying to kill us. Can we just not? Oh, you'll let us live here? Okay, then. And then, of course, when Christians come into those cities, like, these guys are awful, and they're working with the Muslims, and they need to go bye-bye. And
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there's slaves running all the galleys, like, and it is very much, a guy walking along the gang, whacking people if they're not doing their job, that kind of a thing. You could work your way free of being a galley slave if you were particularly competent and skilled.
Good at
you could
rowing.
be elevated. It's interesting. The Ottomans were very good at having loyal slave soldiers.
Huh.
Like the Janissaries are technically slaves. And we talked about these guys before. They're an elite fighting force, particularly skilled with the musket and a saber, or a scimitar, whichever way you want to call it. A talwar is also a common term for it. It's a curved sword, which at sea, really effective.
Oh.
That's why we have like the cutlass. It's a short, curved sword that became very popular.
Okay.
The Muslims, that's all they used was a curved sword. That was their preferred method because you didn't need the double edge or as serious of a point because the armor was a lot lighter. The point of the purpose of the point on the end of a sword is typically to go through armor.
Okay.
It pierces. A slashing weapon doesn't work as well on like a breastplate or chainmail, but a point that'll go through. For most of these people who live in like the desert and the steppes, it's too freaking hot to wear metal armor all day long.
Yeah.
So you really only have to worry about cutting through cloth and maybe some leather. Maybe some light metal.
So curved sword. Ooh, look
Curved
at
sword.
that picture back there. That's a curved sword.
Curved sword. Yeah.
But that just gives you more surface area of for cutting.
It's particularly, that's why you see like on a good butcher's knife, it's curved.
Oh yeah.
Same reasons apply. Okay. But on like a cleaver, it's straight, chop, right?
Yep.
So that's the difference in concept of warfare at this time.
Okay.
So there's very little difference as far as like what their Marines are using. We've got bows, we've got crossbows. The arquebus is very popular now. The arquebus is a matchlock weapon, which means that it takes a burning length of fuse, and it's held on the weapon. And the old ones, you had to physically take it and touch it to the powder to make it go boom. Then they eventually figured out what the match lock was, is it would hold the match for you, the fuse, and then you squeeze the trigger and it would go poof, and then that would hit the fire.
That frees up one hand.
Frees up a hand. So you can aim.
Okay.
Some of these were big enough that they needed a stick to hold the arquebus up, because they were like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
Some
Do
of
we
these
have
were really
do you have
big.
a picture of your arquebus?
I will find a really good picture of an arquebus, and we're going to put it right there.
You better.
I'm gonna. So that's an arquebus. And this is becoming more popular now. It's really simple to train somebody to use it very effectively. To use a longbow particularly well, I don't know. I remember trying when I was in the Boy Scouts. It's not easy to use a bow.
Sure. And probably hard to throw a long bow on a boat.
It's hard. Yep. And if the bowstrings get wet,
Oh.
it's useless.
That's
You have to use like wax to seal the strings.
Yeah.
A wet bowstring is almost useless. It's less effective. And then you got to arc the shot and figure out all this stuff.
Sure.
It's actually easier to keep the powder dry and blow something up that way. Or just, in this case, a lot of the time, rely on your skill as a swordsman or somebody with an axe. Those are very common, too, because you always need an axe for stuff. For cutting timber, cutting ropes, etc.
Yeah.
So these guys are coming in with a sword in one hand, maybe a shield or another axe. They're not using spears and long weapons because they can get tangled in the riggings or on the oars. They're lightly armored, and they're ruthless. Ship-to-ship combat is savagely brutal because you have to kill all of the other guys.
It's true. No,
and
it's
then
no
take
running
their
away.
ship. And then the poor galley slaves, whose lives already suck, are just sitting there like, well, I hope they're not the wrathful type and just kill us. But here's another complication is, if you're a Christian ship attacking a Muslim ship and vice versa, the slaves are your people.
Oh.
So you jump on, start fighting them, try to send somebody down to free up the slaves because they're probably going to join you, but maybe they won't.
I guess they'll
Because
see
it
the
depends.
odds.
Because it depends on the ship, right? Some of them didn't use galley slaves. Some of them just used like Marines, which is not the ship you want to land on.
Not
You're like, I thought it was all galley slaves. That's 300 very angry, stabby people, as opposed to 100 angry, stabby people and 200 people chained to an oar.
Yeah.
So this is super risky, right? You don't know what's going on, and then
I think it's beneficial to treat your slaves nice. Then.
I think it's beneficial to not have slaves.
Well, there's that too.
There is that, but again, free labor, right? So that drives a huge part of this. Is, you know what? It's easier than just killing these. It's more humane than just killing these guys and spilling their blood.
Sure.
God doesn't like that, but he's pretty okay with slavery, and the Bible is pretty okay with slavery. It's basically, if they're different than you, it's fine.
We wrote it down. It must be true.
It's fine. So both religions are able to square it. Well, they're infidels. It doesn't matter. You know, and we had this papal thing where it was, if they aren't Christians, they don't count as people.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about that?
On the papal thing about the
That's
people.
in effect. That counts.
Oh, that's right.
So they're not people.
Pope Innocent?
I think it was one of the Gregories.
Okay.
Although Pope Innocent, we just talked about how one of the popes innocent was not so innocent.
Yeah.
So this is the warfare we're at right now.
Okay.
And Suleiman needs to handle this. He's tired of this state of affairs, of constant piracy back and forth. And he has recruited to his side two of the most vicious pirates in history. One of them, who I'll try to have his own thing about, his name is Barbarossa.
Barbarossa, I've heard of him.
There's a couple Barbarossas. So there's the Barbarossa, who's Friedrich Barbarossa. He's a German, and he was a king in the 12th century and, 13th century. And he was a bit of a troublemaker and a tough guy, and kind of forged what became the later Holy Roman Empire.
Okay.
Very famous guy.
Yeah. But
the Barbarossa the Corsair is like an unholy terror. He's this red-bearded, because that's what Barbarossa means, is red beard. He's one of the Barbary Corsairs. So the Barbary Coast, we've heard of this kind of concept. They were Muslim, usually, although there were Christians who worked with them.
Sure.
Corsairs, which is guys in galleys rowing around and attacking people.
Also a
stealing
small
stuff.
plane, I believe.
A galley or a Corsair?
No, Corsair.
Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of things called a Corsair because of these guys.
Okay.
Because it cuts through the water and it's dangerous and
Sure.
Corsair. So yeah, if you were called a Corsair, you're typically on the Muslim side of things, and then that was just their phrase for that.
Okay.
So Barbarossa is this ruthless guy. He's been building up a pirate empire. He's very scary. But featuring in our story is a guy named Dragut. And Dragut is considered the greatest military mind in Ottoman history. If not the greatest, he's up there. He is Suleiman's top admiral type guy. And he's not even like directly related. Like, he owns his own kingdom that he forged out of piracy and skill alone in Tripoli. He's terrifying. And
Never heard of him.
Yeah, no, and exactly, right? I feel like everybody should know who this guy is because I started reading up on him. He is referred to as the drawn sword of Islam.
Ooh.
That's like, and that's how scary this guy is. Like, he's like the weapon of a whole faith.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, that's a good title. Now, he was born in 1485, so by the time of this,
He's old then.
he's almost 80.
That was a...
He's an old man, and he's still a corsair.
Wow.
Day in and day out, sailing, lives on the sea, loves to fight. He's great at it.
His skin's got to be like leather.
It's just leather. It's just doesn't even wear armor. It's just leather. It's just leather. So he's been around a while. And it's interesting because a lot of these Ottoman leaders are very old. They get very old. So we're going to cut into it because I just
Mediterranean
realized
lifestyle.
Mediterranean lifestyle. You don't eat tons of meat. You're out on the sea, get fresh air. Live well.
Kill some Muslims or Christians,
Or
depending
Christians,
what side
depends
you're on.
on what side you're on. Whoever you want to kill, whomever you want to kill. So, Suleiman is planning to make this huge invasion. Just basically take over the Mediterranean. While he's building up, the French are like, we must stop him. We will create a fleet and we will attack him.
I didn't even know the French were involved in this.
The French are involved
All
in
of a
this.
sudden, the French come out of nowhere.
Show up. The French show up with Spanish, again, World War situation.
Sure.
Right? This has been nonstop warfare,
man.
basically, for like 100 years on the Mediterranean. Just brutal, ruthless warfare, nonstop.
I didn't even know the French had ships.
They have ships. They have a coastline. Marseille, it is on the coast. The Côte d'Azur, the blue coast, that is French. It's lovely. Mostly they just sit there and chill.
I imagine they just float around.
We just sit here and look at the water, drink some wine, maybe some coffee.
C'est la vie.
C'est la vie. C'est la vue. Look how nice. Oh, look. The Spanish and the Barbary Corsairs are having a fight. Should we get involved, Henri?
Nah.
Let's just watch.
Oui.
I like to think that's what France is. It's just super chill.
But
But their kings are usually dicks.
Not as chill.
They're not as chill. They have no chill. All the French kings are just like, fight something, man. Go punch somebody in the face.
Wow.
So they sail all the way from France to engage Suleiman's fleet. They're like, we're going to crush this guy. And it's at the Battle of Djerba, which is D-J-E-R-B-A. This is in 1560, so we're moving along, right?
Yeah, German.
In 1560, they fight the Christians. They lose like 3 ships.
The French?
The Ottoman fleet loses like 3 ships.
Okay.
The French fleet loses 60 ships and between 8,000 and 15,000 killed or drowned, and then take 5,000 prisoners afterwards in a siege.
What have we done? We should have stayed there.
We should have stayed, Henri. Why did we not
What are we
stay there?
thinking?
We should have just watched the fighting.
Oh, no.
It is a huge, devastating blow. And Suleiman, though, they're not great at following through. Naval battles are notoriously bad in the Mediterranean. And anytime anybody wins in the Mediterranean in a naval battle, they almost never do anything afterwards.
Wow.
Like the Greeks were good at that.
It's hard to claim the sea
Right,
with a flag.
because then you try to go... Yeah, just... Look at that.
I've
Not
claimed
even
nothing.
close. Suleiman, we claimed the sea. Did you?
Where'd you
How
put
many flags are at the bottom of the sea?
Just floating away.
Just hundreds of flagpoles because the flags have all been eaten by fish. There's hundreds of them. The whole bottom of the Mediterranean. This is a bad idea. I didn't know why, but everyone trying to claim it, he's French.
That's how you claim it.
So Suleiman crushes this navy, and the French actually build back a new navy pretty quick.
Oh.
But I don't think they're very enthusiastic about trying to go and fight Suleiman again because he crushed.
Yeah, I
them.
wouldn't be either.
He the losses were so negligible. It was like 100 some odd guys maybe died, and like 3 ships maybe. They might not have actually had any losses. Like that's being
statistically
generous.
none.
Statistically, like functionally, as far as actual like loss goes, it was We lose more from a storm.
Yeah, just by accident, just by
We-
sure floating around in
That
storms.
guy dropped the anchor too fast, sunk
Right.
his ship, and brought down the one next to him. That guy was clumsy.
We
with,
accidentally killed more of our guys
Yep.
than we did in war.
Yep.
All right.
So Suleiman's coming off this big victory, right? So that's our setting. Suleiman
Tough guy.
wants to finish things up in the Mediterranean. He sees this opportunity. He's like, I just crushed this giant navy. So he starts to gather his forces again. He's got this huge plan of landing in places and dealing with things. However, since the Knights Hospitaller left Rhodes in 1522, they have been busy.
Oh.
So they went to find support from other Christian kings. And Charles V, the absurdly rich and incredibly popular, mostly. There are other countries who are like, he looks like he's going to be the emperor of Europe, and we don't like it.
Everyone likes emperors on their way up, but then at some point, that's too much.
So, like, the French don't like them. The French and the Spanish have, like, this history of not liking each other, but nobody likes Suleiman, so they can all get on board. Like, we don't like the Turks. But usually they're too busy beating each other up to do anything about it. Just like how the Ottomans are so busy politicking that they never fully unite. This is fortunate for everybody on every side, because otherwise there probably would be no people. Like, one side would have just gone, this is stupid, let's kill everybody. Oh, we are all dead too. Oh. This didn't work. Let's start over.
Right.
So the Knights of Malta are granted, or they become the Knights of Malta because they're granted Malta. The Knights Hospitaller
are now
the Knights of Malta. Hey. They change their robes from black, probably because it's too damn hot.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To red, but they still have the white cross.
Okay.
And they are given the island for the cost of 1 falcon every year.
Oh.
And this is the Maltese falcon. Oh. To be gifted, it's a live falcon that has to be reared on the island and is gifted to the king and queen of Sicily every year.
A new falcon.
And that's their cost. That's it. That's the only monetary tribute they have to pay. Now, there's some side notes.
That's very whimsical.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I don't know why they went with.
Do they have good
falcon.
falcons there?
Apparently, because this happened until 1798 was the last time it happened, and that was because
They ran out of falcons.
Well, the French said no more of this because they had their revolution.
Oh, okay.
And they now owned Sicily.
I thought maybe they had an aviary somewhere just full of falcons.
Yeah,
No more. Thanks.
We've had so many falcons.
Possibly.
We have hundreds of thousands of falcons.
Do you know when you get them here, they breed and they just get more. We have so many falcons.
You keep giving us mated pairs. We only wanted
Stop giving us falcons.
And then they're like, oh, that's why they only wanted one at a time, because they knew they'd breed like rabbits. This is just terrible.
Somewhere back in France, just like pigeons or just
but
falcons
they're
everywhere.
Falcons. So they're just mean pigeons. Like there's just this one. It's like the island of Sicily, because that's where they all go. It's just filled with just voracious, savage falcons everywhere. Yeah. You can't have a cat. You can't have a small dog.
I like this short story.
The smallest pet you can have is a cow, because the falcons can't make off with it or kill it and eat it. But then suddenly there's
they can start growing. They can
400 falcons just descend on one cow and it's just a skeleton. They're like flying piranha. I love this story idea. We're gonna write about this.
Right.
Too many falcons.
Too many falcons.
Too many Maltese. The Maltese falcons.
Somewhere along the lines, well, you can't have too many falcons, and no, actually, you can.
Point of order, sir. You can in fact have too many. Here's how. All right. I just realized we've been talking for so long, and I have not gotten to the siege itself.
Yeah.
And the siege is fascinating. So, that's not great. So the Knights of Malta now. That's what they call themselves. The Knights of Malta, they go, we're doing exactly what we used to do in Rhodes, but now we're in the middle of the Mediterranean. We're at the hub of all trade. Oh. And we're going to go back to our pirating ways and beating the snot out of any non-Christian shipping we find.
Okay.
That's their thing.
So you've put us in this wonderful position. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's kind of like they're given this mandate. You will give us this bird, and you will maintain a garrison here and on 2 other places, but mostly we're just going to focus on Malta. And you are allowed to do any attacking you want to, and you're not allowed to ever, ever, ever attack Sicily. That's the rule. And like, sounds good.
That's a sweet deal.
They never violate that rule. They never attack Sicily. Okay. Good job, Malta.
Well done, Malta.
So they immediately go, well, we can't have what happened in Rhodes ever happen again. No. So they start building forts all across the island, and they really start investing in the harbor, which is a really complex thing. Right there.
Oh, are we doing that?
Oh, I've got a picture of the harbor of Malta. It is wild. It's just multiple peninsulas. It's a perfect harbor for like having a lot of ships. It's like a naturally made port where you could have a ton of ships in, make new ships, and it's perfect for a naval base. It's rocky, it's tough terrain, and you can really only get there through one spot. So it's ideal. It's a perfect place to create a fortress for this knight order that also engages in rampant piracy. The pirates that they have one particular pirate whose name is Romigas.
Romigas.
He is a knight and a professional corsair. He is a brutal and efficient pirate. He is very skilled, and he's actually used as an excuse by Suleiman to invade Malta.
This one guy
This one guy is so good at being
deal.
a pirate
Yeah.
that Suleiman's like, all right. I should have killed all of you at Rhodes. I let some of you leave. I let you guys go. I am man enough to admit I made a mistake. Next time, and somewhere way down the line, someone's going to come out with a term for this, but I'm going to kill every single one of you.
Okay.
I don't know what that term is,
Let's find out.
but I'm going to come up with a way
Okay.
to systematically wipe out everybody who looks, acts, and talks like you and wears the clothes you wear.
Sounds like
for
a
you.
sore loser to me.
He's really mad at this point because he's lost untold amounts of money, thousands of soldiers and sailors, and now his people are enslaved, and then the slaves he had are being freed, and then fighting again. It's just a headache all around.
Yeah.
So he is very frustrated, and he just sees this as this. This is the one thing stopping him from dominance in the Mediterranean. If he can break this symbol of Christian resilience,
Yeah.
he will break them. He thought crushing that fleet at Jerba would be the end of it. But these guys won't stop.
Yeah.
And they're ruthless. Like, they just keep hitting him. Every time he's like, trade's fine. There's Romigas. There's these guys, and they just won't stop fighting me.
I just want to...
Why can't everybody just let me conquer this? I just want a lake, okay? Is it so much to ask for a beach house on a lake? That's all I want.
It's hard to have the whole lake.
I like him to think about it as Suleiman saw Malta and was like, great place for a palace.
I like it. Looks nice.
If I built a house there, I could see Sicily.
Sure. From
And,
my window.
and if I look really hard, I could see Tripoli in North Africa.
What a
See
view.
both sides. I love it. I
Great.
love it.
I love
want
it.
it. I want it.
Got a lot of natural light coming in.
Suleiman at this time is 70 years old. He's
running out of time.
running out of time.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
And it would take a huge effort for him to personally, first of all, he's got a lot of political stuff going on back home. So he also has to manage, you have to manage the whole empire.
Hard running an empire.
And the Ottoman Empire is huge and has a massive bureaucracy to run it properly, but you still need the Sultan to run it.
Yeah.
He's got kids in place to take over after he dies. He's got it all planned for a smooth
That's
transition.
good planning there.
His wife is brilliant. She's like a force to be reckoned with, so he's not too worried about that. His previous wife was also tough. He's got a bunch of wives. He's allowed.
Sure.
He's got a harem.
Right.
So that's a thing. But he had two wives, and they were both very different. One of them was a redhead.
Oh.
She's famous for being a redhead.
I suppose it is unusual in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, she was originally from a Christian kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
And then she converted to
yeah.
Islam.
People can travel, sure.
Because if you can marry the head of the Ottoman Empire, most people are like, yeah, my religion's not that important to me. We both worship God, so let's just change the language for the prayers, and we're good.
Yeah.
So she's fine with it. And so he's going to sit in his palace back home and enjoy his being old and having grandkids and stuff. But he really needs this done. So he finds his best generals and unfortunately makes the weird choice to divvy the command between two guys.
Uh-oh.
Which never in the history of ever has worked well.
Oh, man.
Ever. So this is the writing on the wall of what's going on. Now, he has previously thought about invading Malta. Full disclosure. In 1551, Dragut, the drawn sword of Islam, shows up on Malta with an army. It's not a massive army, and he's like, ooh, well, this is stupid. And they kind of volley a few shells at this city, and they're like,
they've built some nice things up there. I don't know.
Not quite ready to do this. He goes to the next island over to a place called Gozo, sacks it, burns it, goes to Tripoli, sacks it, burns it, takes it as his new fort. That's why he's now the Prince of Tripoli. He's just like, I'm doing this. Malta's dumb. These kind of sailed by.
Hard.
It kind of like sailed by and he's like, nah, no.
See all the falcons flying around there?
They're vicious. They keep killing my soldiers. They go right for the eyes. It's awful. So Suleiman, though, wants his best general and his best admiral, and he wants them to work together.
Want you to work together.
He picks Mustafa Pasha. Pasha's a title. So Mustafa is the general's name. And I want to get the guy's name right for his admiral because he is also very famous. Wrong admiral, not him. Where'd I put it? Piali. Piali. So Admiral Piali and Mustafa Pasha. Pasha is... not Pasha. Mustafa is a very famous field commander at this time. He's like Suleiman's top guy.
Yeah.
He's also 70.
Oh, come on.
This says a lot about Ottoman culture, that these guys are still out in the field, riding around on horseback.
Yeah.
Or elephant back. Sometimes they rode
Or just
elephants.
alive still.
Or just alive at this time period. They're 70 years old. I don't know what they're doing. It's all that cha that they drink. That's
Something.
a very common drink out there. It's super sweet. It's just basically
like chai?
It's chai, but they call it cha, and it's hot tea, which you're drinking hot tea in 100-degree weather. I had it once while I was in Iraq, and it was delicious and delightful. But it's basically tastes like melted honey, like not melted, but like so that there's no viscosity. It's watered down honey, almost very, very, very sweet. But there's a whole ritual to it, just like it's all about just chilling and being calm. And no raised voice. If you're drinking cha,
that's how you live to be 70.
If you're just drinking cha, you are not worrying about the world.
All right.
We're in the middle of a war zone, and I was in Baghdad, and my interpreter and I, we shared cha, and it was delightful.
Huh.
It's the only time I ever saw him. He took his hat and his sunglasses off, and that's the only time I ever saw like his just face, because he always was hiding something. He didn't want the enemy to know who he was or what he looked like, because the penalty for being an interpreter in Iraq is horrific death.
Yeah.
If the insurgents got you.
Sure.
Because those guys are very extreme. So we just sat there, and he and I had shot. It was like, that was the one time I saw him without his hat and shades, and he was just super chill.
Oh.
It's like, so this is what you guys do? He's like, yeah. We had like this candid discussion about, how people go about like dating in Iraq and all. We were just hanging out, and he was like, this is just how you do cha.
I'm going to see if I can get some cha.
Yeah. So you just,
if I can locally source that,
it's a much more chill experience. So I'm
pro cha.
So that's how they lived to be 1,000 years old in the 1500s.
Sure.
So Piali and Mustafa have very different approaches to battle. One is a sailor, one is a soldier. And they don't get on well. They're vying for power and favoritism within the court. They both want to show off to Suleiman the Magnificent that they are the best. And Suleiman knows this is going to be a problem, so he sends Dragut to be his mediator.
Okay.
You will make sure they all get along, and you're kind of nominally in command because you know the most about everything.
This will work. All right.
And it'll work.
Sure.
Until it doesn't.
Right.
So these guys amass a fleet. The number of ships has been swapped out so many times. It's at least 125 or 150 ships. Okay. The smallest numbers estimated for ground forces that were sent, and this is by everybody involved, is 25,000 men. Numbers as high as 40,000 have been estimated. The most commonly assumed amount is 30 grand.
Yeah, right in the middle.
30,000 men.
Okay.
So that's our assumption. So however many boats it takes to get them.
Okay.
The Maltese forces, their commander, who's we'll get into him in a second. He's awesome. He's a very fascinating character. I know. This is running long. Sorry. We haven't done this in a while. It's been like a week and a half or 2 weeks since I did this. So I'm okay. So the fleet sets sail with all of these different leaders running it, and they get to Malta, and they don't really know what to do, so they have to send a scouting force. So they land a ship that fails miserably to find anything to do, and they realize we have to attack the harbor.
Oh.
That is the only way this is going to work.
It's probably not very well defended, I'm sure.
Not at all. Not at all. Meanwhile, back on the Maltese side of things, the Maltese are led, the Knights of Malta are led by their Grand Master, whose name... Flash. No, his name is Jean Perisot. Paris O.T.
Okay.
But he's called De la Valette. Or Valletta. He's a French knight. Joined the order when he was 20. He was born in 1495, so he's also another older guy.
Yeah.
So he's this gray beard and plate armor. And once he takes command, he's like, and he takes command in 1557. So he was there for the siege in 51. He's been fighting at sea and on land against the Ottomans for like 30 years, nonstop.
He's been around.
This guy's been around. And you don't get to be the Grandmaster by just being some desk jockey. He's a warrior. He's extremely well respected. So he takes all of the citizens and he's like, you guys all have to go to this fortress called Medina, which is in the middle of the island. It's a hill fort. It's inland, and they're going to try to come for us first. They're not going to go for you guys. If they do, we'll be there to protect you as much as we can. His military forces consist of 500 knights, their personal retainers and men-at-arms, to the tune of about 2,500 men. They recruit a militia, and then they recruit their own galley slaves who actually sign up.
Everybody. Everyone's working today.
So in total, they have like 6,000 guys.
That's still not enough.
This is all written down by a fellow named Francisco Balbi, who is from Correggio. He is a soldier. He's a Spanish soldier. He's an arquebusier. He's a gunman. And he kept a detailed journal and account of everything that happened. And he fought in this battle. After he was done, he published his journal saying, this is exactly what happened. It has a lot of details about everything that occurred, about the hardships of the soldiers, about what the Ottomans were like, about what they were like. So now we get to the battle itself. The Ottomans are like, we've got to make landfall, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And Malta is surrounded by forts. It's got a fort on the end of every single peninsula, and there are like 3 major peninsulas that stick out into it. The main forts are St. Elmo, St. Michael, and St. Angelo. Then there's Medina, which is the fort in the middle, and a place called the Post of Castile, which is like another fortress.
Right.
And these are all stone, covered in guns, and guarded by knights and people. And the point of these is you don't need a lot of guys to fire a bunch of guns at a bunch of boats. And the boats can't all shoot at you at once.
It's got to be hard to get an island, like to attack an island.
It's just hard. On ideal conditions. This is a rocky promontory of death that they've turned this into. It's any approach you make, we're going to kill you. The Ottomans go crazy with plans here. They haul 8 ships overland to try to like bring it into the port behind the fortifications. Because what the Maltese have done is, rather than just have like this open waterway, they drag a giant chain across it so you can't sail through. Then they plant stakes in the shallows, so if you get off the boat, you get impaled or your boat gets ripped apart as you sail in. They do this, one of the most brilliant things I've ever read about. Built into the bases of some of the towers, hidden behind masonry, they have cannons.
Sneaky.
So that when the Ottomans come up, they're like, it's just a wall. They knock the wall down and blast the Ottomans.
Surprise!
It's crazy. So the Ottomans decide the best thing to attack is St. Elmo. It's the newest fort. It's the weakest fort. It's not very big. And, if you tickle it, it giggles, right? So they land a force to attack it. And the guy who says, we need to hit this, is Dragut. This is his advice. This is the weakest fort. Do what I tell you. He gives some other advice that nobody listens to.
Oh, come on. He's the sword of Islam.
This is the guy, right?
Yeah.
But their pride is, no, we're in charge. We're not listening to you. So they don't listen to him fully with all of his advice. And actually, no, he didn't say Elmo. He said, I think his was St. Michael. It was a different fort. It was one of the stronger forts. But he's like, if you hit it here, we can land more troops and we can do more with it. This is the better spot. They ignore him completely, and they go after St. Elmo. It's weaker, smaller, no problem. They hammer this place. They drag 60 guns on shore, point them at this fort, and blast at it. Unfortunately for them, the guys at the fort have guns too, and they shoot back. So it's cannons shooting back and forth. They can't surround it because of all the precautions these guys have taken, and because it's just stone. You can't land a boat on stone.
No.
They lose 8,000 men in the assault.
Yowza.
By the time they're done, they break through the walls. And what's going on at night, though, is there's this fort here, and there's the fort across the bay going, are you guys okay? Yeah, we're fine. Can you send a boat with some more guys? And they just keep sending guys back and forth. They send recruits in, drag the wounded out,
Yeah.
and they just keep doing this.
Rest up. Yeah.
But they kill 8,000, largely Janissaries, so the elite fighting force get butchered by these guys. When they finally crack through the walls, there are 9 knights left. That's all. They refuse to quit. They're like tattered armor. Now, we'll talk quick about the gear these guys are using. Like we said, these guys that attacked are corsairs. Light armor, light gear, attacking from boats. But the knights are like full plate. They're not worried about falling off a ship. This is not an amphibious battle. We're talking full heavy armor, a sword, a shield, a gun a lot of the times, axes. These guys are able to take a beating. And they just have been hammered on for like a week straight. So there's 9 of them left. They are so disgusted with how this battle is going. Mustafa has them all beheaded and then crucified, put on a ferry, like a little raft, and shoved out into the bay.
Yows.
And then he assesses.
That's a visual image.
We lost 8,000 guys taking the weakest fort.
This is going to be a
We've
long
got
week.
3 more forts, plus the main part of Malta itself, because the forts are forts, but there's still a fortified city. Like there's multiple towns that make this up, and they're all fortified. And he's like, it took so much.
For the
How about
easiest
you
one.
guys surrender? Give us the island. And Devalet gets on top of the walls and says, he's this old guy, I will give you this ditch in front of the walls so that you have a place to put the bodies of your men.
Oh, snap.
This does not sit well with Mustafa or anybody else. Unfortunately, in July, Dragut is part of he's watching the assault. He's part of this. He's engaged. He's like standing where the cannons are. A cannonball lands near him, shatters a bunch of like wood protective parts. Like they built like wood ramparts to like try to make fortifications so they were protected while shooting. It annihilates that, and he gets hit by the shrapnel and dies.
Oh, no.
So they lose the guy that was linking them all together. So it turns into an argument between Mustafa and Piali, and nobody's listening to anybody else. The siege starts to drag on because they were like, well, we were a little premature.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll try to starve. They keep shelling them.
Yeah, well, you're here. You
We're
might as
here.
well.
We may as well shoot at you. They try all these different tactics, and every single one of them gets countered because these Maltese people are just relentless.
Yep.
Everybody's fighting.
Well, what's I going to do? They're on an island. I'm not going to leave.
They can't leave. They're going to die if they leave, right? Yeah. But they're prepared, and they are prepared, all of them, to a man, to die. Like, they're men, women, children, they don't care. They've done what they can, but they're willing to die for this. Apparently, just one chunk of the city that was shelled took more than 160,000 cannonballs fired at it.
Wow.
That's how badly the Ottomans were just like, I just want to kill the entire town.
It's about to sink an island.
I just want to sink the island. And they had, like, cannons that could fire 200-pound stone cannonballs. It was one of their weapons that they used. And then iron cannonballs that weighed like 90 pounds. So these are massive.
Yeah.
And they're just shelling this nonstop. Finally, they like break through a wall. There's a bit that causes panic. It's not really sure what actually happened. People say there was a mine that blew up because you used to dig under the walls, plant gunpowder, and blow it up and try to take the wall down. Others say that the people got alarmed because the Turks were like right outside the wall and they weren't expecting it. Either way, it causes a panic. So, Jean Perisseau basically straps on his armor, marches down to the wall, and refuses to budge until the Turks are killed or he's dead.
Yeah.
They drive the Turks off, which was amazing.
Yeah.
He's alive. He's like 60, and he's fighting on the front lines, and it inspires everybody. And his constant, like, anytime there's trouble, he goes there and deals with it. He's this inspiring presence to his guys. Meanwhile, the best guy in the Turkish army's dead, and the two generals are still bickering at each other. This gives time for the Maltese reinforcements to arrive. 8,000 men, led by Don Garcia of Toledo. He shows up. 8,000 men. And this is in September 7th.
We're not even to the actual event?
Well, no, we're past it.
Okay,
18th
good.
of May was when it started.
I like overtime.
I know, we're overtime. We're overtime. This is a huge thing.
All right.
I'm excited.
Go
I
ahead.
love this one.
Good.
Anyway, he shows up with 8,000 men, and the Turks are just like, we still outnumber them. But we have lost
It's been a long time.
so many men. We
people are away
started
from
this
home,
in May.
yeah.
It's September now. We've been here for months. They won't die. We don't know how many are left. And at this time, unknown to them, there are only 500 people really left standing
Don't tell
in
them.
Malta.
Don't tell them how many of us are here.
They're so dispirited that they stopped attacking like the fortifications and they tried to attack the hill fort that all the citizens are hiding in. And the citizens are like, just shoot at them, see what happens. And they start shooting cannons at totally ludicrous range. There's no way they're going to hit anybody. And the Turks are like, well, they got bullets to spare. Let's just go back to the meat grinder.
Good.
So the Spaniard shows
Accidental
up.
tip.
It worked. They were like, I can't believe that worked.
No.
I feel like it was just a bunch of scared people who didn't know how the cannons worked.
Sure,
And they're like, I
yeah.
think we can hit them from here, right? They're running. Good job, people.
Yay.
We scared them. So the Spaniards show up and it's like a multinational landing force. They show up and they take this hill and just fortify it and they're ready. They're expecting the Ottomans to attack. The Ottomans are like, this is stupid. We've been doing this. We're bleeding. We're dying. We've got disease. We want to go home. We're going to go home. So the order's given to withdraw. But on the way out, they make a mistake.
Uh-oh.
They decide to burn all the villages and all the land and all the property on the way.
Yeah.
Because they're mad. They've been at this stage. They're frustrated. So they
Sure, I
vent
guess.
their frustration on all this property.
Don't leave a battlefield angry.
So these guys who showed up, among them are the Knights of St. John. So these are other Crusader knights. Their brethren have been fighting and dying. These are innocent people. They're watching these homes burn, and they're pissed. So before their general can even tell them what to do, they all charge off the hill. It's only 8,000 men against like 15,000 Turks. And it's a rout. The Turks have no way of stopping. Like the Turks are like running and they're like, oh crap, they're coming for us. Let's go get them. They run back the other way and they get hammered. These knights come riding down on horseback. It's like the war that they were ready for. This is like the ideal crazy charge of knighthood against everything we're trained to fight against. And the Turks just get annihilated.
No. Yay.
Mustafa's like, I'm going home.
Yep.
He leads a rearguard action. He's eventually able to get his men on their ships and leave, and they limp home. To the tune of, the Maltese lose. There's a general consensus. Nobody knows exactly how many they lost, but a fair assumption is 5,000 or so died. The Turks lose at minimum 20,000 men. The high estimate is up to 35,000. It all depends on numbers of troops they've got and reinforcements. Sometimes they don't factor in Dragut's men because they technically aren't Ottomans. They're his own army. It's a devastating loss for Suleiman, and it breaks this myth that he's invincible. So this is the height of his empire, the height of his strength, and he can't dislodge what everybody points out is 500 Crusaders sitting on a hill.
You done messed up, Suleiman.
And it just totally dispirits him.
Sure.
Suleiman dies a year later.
Poor guy.
Probably depressed.
Aw.
Probably down about this. The top admiral in all of Ottoman history, he's dead. The leaders that were in charge are disgraced because they lost this massive fleet. They lost all these soldiers. They try to rally, and a couple years later is the Battle of Lepanto. It's in 1571, and it is the end of the Ottoman Navy. It's a combined battle against Venice and Spain, the French. Everybody shows up to the party, and it's this massive fleet, huge undertaking. It's the last push by the Ottomans, and they just get crushed. It never recovers.
Okay.
The Ottomans never recover. So the extent of this battle then is La Valette lives, which is crazy because he's been in the fight this whole time. He does die a couple years later, but he's old and he's been fighting all this time, so he's tired. He's allowed to die.
Okay.
But Malta becomes this symbolic battle that never ends. It also is symbolic that the Ottomans aren't invincible, so they become considered less of a threat. They start to become kind of this dying and decaying empire, and they just takes them a long time to die off.
Yeah, well, it takes a while. It's an empire.
Yeah, they never come back nearly as strong. They're always seen as the big bad that can unite Europe until World War One. Even they're still considered they're the big bad. They're the Ottomans. They could do anything, but they never have this same fear again. It's just this wild thing that just happens where it was this one island and they couldn't crack it and it just crushed them. It's a fascinating thing. And I'm sorry it took me so long to talk about
We
it.
went way over time.
Way over time.
I blame the Colossus of Rhodes.
I do too. We got really talking about his bells.
Well, we'll see if we can. See if I can cut any of that out. We'll find out. Probably not.
cut it out.
We're out of time.
We're out of time, guys.
He
Sorry.
went over. What am I going to do? Stop him? I can't stop him.
You can't stop me. You can't stop me. Hold on.
Yeah, I could. But
You could turn it off.
moving on. Next week we'll be discussing something totally different.
Totally different. We're switching continents again.
Going over here to North America.
We're going to talk about American
1800s.
history.
The Indian Removal Act of 1830. Will is already excited about it.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled.
He's going to be bitter. So, like and subscribe, do all the things. Check out the links and stuff below.
Yep. Share and share alike.
Share, yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Even if you don't know for sure you want to share, you should share. Always share videos. I don't know.
Might as well. Cost you nothing.
It costs you nothing.
All right. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Mike.
Next time.
Bye.
Bye.